Good day. I want to share with you some of my thoughts on your reading over the course notes, specifically the introduction to the discernment of spirits. So this is just a brief little intro in discernment of spirits. It's a very sophisticated skill that requires a lifetime, and most times we suggest that you do this in consultation with a spiritual director. So before we talk about the discernment of spirits, though, we want to get a little bigger context. So we want to talk about the first principle and foundation again. So hopefully you remember that. This is one of the pieces from the spiritual exercises. And the first principle and foundation says that what? Everything in our world is pure gift. And these gifts are presented to us so that we can come to know God more easily and return our life as a gift of love more readily. And the criteria is that we use these gifts as they draw us closer to God, and we don't use these gifts if they bring us away from God. So it's always focusing on God. That's a helpful perspective when we talk about discernment of spirits. So the other caveat, in addition to the first principle foundation, is that we're not talking about making a decision about anything that's immoral. If it's immoral, you just don't do it. You don't need to discern that. The discernment of spirits, though, quite often is we use this in our life when we're confused or in doubt or not clear about what to do. And obviously, then we can use some of these principles. And it's a way for us to listen for God's will in a particular situation. And it requires some patience. The next thing is that Ignatius says that we can learn about God or learn about God's will from our feelings. Interesting, isn't it? And he talks about consolation and desolation. So the reading spoke about consolation and desolation in terms of good and evil spirit. So we're talking about psychologically, most of us don't talk about terms of good and evil spirit. That was kind of a byproduct of Ignatius's time. But we do want to acknowledge that evil exists, it's a part of us, and it's bigger than us. So with consolation and desolation, so the hallmarks of consolation is that consolation gives us an experience of getting outside of ourselves. We can connect to other people, the world. There's a newness, there's an inspiration. And this is where God is active and leading us. Then, desolation, that's when we're kind of closed in on ourselves. We're cut off from others. We want to give up, and it drains us. And so remember, the focus is about getting outside of ourselves or being channeled inside of ourselves. So then the question becomes, is given these basic principles of consolation and desolation, what are some rules for discernment? And our feelings can be tricky, so should we always depend on our feelings? And of course, the answer is no. So one rule is that when we're kind of shut in on ourselves, we're closed off, we are perhaps feeling depressed or isolated or lonely or who knows, the good spirit is going to disturb us. It is going to, in a sense, break us from outside. One thing that happens for me is, say, for example, if I go to a funeral or I hear about some tragic news, and in that before that moment, perhaps I was feeling sorry for myself or I was feeling down, the good spirit will kind of snap me out, like give me perspective, like, let's keep things in perspective. It's kind of like what Sitzer said about, it's easy to go to the why me, but why not me? It gives us perspective. Then the other situation might be when we're trying to really do the right thing, but we're not feeling so great. The good spirit will encourage us. God will bring us peace and consolation that, okay, you may be struggling at this particular moment, but you're going to make it. A lot of people, a lot of teachers I know feel that way. I felt that way yesterday after our first day of trying to speak with you via Zoom in a classroom and then also try to see me. I felt really discouraged. And then, God's like, no, you've got this. You've got this. So those are some basic rules for discernment. Remember, the focus is always on, where is this leading me? Is this, in a sense, drawing me outside of myself into God and relationship? Or is it, in a sense, drawing me within myself? Thomas Merton talked about hell as the experience of being trapped within ourselves. And that's kind of the focus you want to keep. All right. Good luck. Happy discerning.